Namaste and greetings. I, Ritika Sundar, a visiting researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav Evam Niti Anusandhan Sansthan, Nai Delhi, warmly welcome you all to IMPRI #Web Policy Talk. Today, we have gathered here for a panel discussion on COP26 and locally led adaptations in India and Bangladesh Sunderbans. This talk is a part of the series, The State of the Environment, #Planet Tax, which is organized by #IMPRI Center for Environment, Climate Change and Sustainable Development. Today, it is my honor to introduce Chair and the panelists. The chair for today's deliberation is Dr. Jayanta Basu, Director, Nonprofit EnGIO, faculty at Calcutta University, and an environmental journalist at the Telegraph ABB. With the permission of the chair, I would like to introduce the panelists.
Ritika, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. The distinguished panelists include Professor Souvanic Roy, Professor, Department of Architecture, Town and Regional Planning, and founder director of the School of Ecology, Infrastructure and Human Settlement Management, Indian Institute of Engineering, Science and Technology at Shibpur. Professor Andy Large, Professor of River Science at Newcastle University, UK, Principal Investigator and Director at UKRI, GCRF Living Deltas Hub. Professor Salimul Huq, Director, International Center for Climate Change and Development, and Professor at Independent University, Bangladesh. Professor Manoj Roy, Assistant Professor in Sustainability, Lancaster University in UK. The two presenters are Dr. Upasana Ghosh, faculty at Indian Institute of Public Health, Bhubaneswar, and Dr. Debajyoti Das, anthropologist of South Asia, principal investigator, SSRC Environmental Refugees Project. We look forward to learning from our distinguished speakers, and we also look forward to an enriching deliberation. With that, I invite Dr. Simi Mehta, CEO and Editorial Director, IMPRI New Delhi, and the moderator of today's session to take over. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, Ritika, and good evening, everyone. I hope you're all keeping well and safe. So today we have gathered for the panel discussion, which is very important with respect to the populace and their living conditions in the Sunderbans Delta on both the Indian and the Bangladeshi side. So as you all know that the population has exhibited a lot of resilience amid frequent natural hazards. And according to a list which is maintained by the Weather Underground, 26 of the 35 most deadliest tropical cyclones of the world has been recorded in this region. And further, the recent pandemic has added a new dimension to the Delta's precarious environment. And despite the above, the locally led adaptations to address climate change and natural disasters in this subcontinent has been very, very effective. And this has had a significant bearing for the socio-economic and policy relevance. So today's panel discussion brings together experts who have been working on the Sunderbans on both India and Bangladeshi side. This discussion becomes especially very important in light of the recently concluded COP26 in Glasgow. Professor Souvanic Roy, as Ritika has mentioned, he has worked in an international consortium funded by the UKRI RC UK under the leadership of Newcastle University UK, and he will be speaking on the Indian Sunderbans. Professor Andy Large, he directs the UKRI RC UK Living Deltas Hub, and he will be speaking from the hub's perspective and his experiences. Professor Salimul Huq, Director of ICAT Bangladesh, will be speaking on Bangladesh Sunderbans. Professor Manoj Roy will be also sharing his views and experiences of working on the Bangladesh Sunderbans. And further, IMPRI Impact and Policy Research Institute, being a collaborator in the SSRC Trans-Regional Project on Environmental Refugees, Climate, Health and Livelihood in the Indian Ocean World, with Sunderbans being one of the sites of inquiry, there will be a small presentation by Dr. Upasana Ghosh and Dr. Debajyoti Das, who will be presenting some findings from the ongoing research. Dr. Das is the lead PI of the project, and Dr. Upasana is a member. So welcome everyone, and I would like to invite Dr. Jayanta Basu. Sir, if you can hear me, can you hear me, sir? Sir, please unmute yourself, and I request you to share your opening remarks.
Yes, am I audible now? Finally. Sorry, everybody. This technology often puts us in a bit of a soup, and I had been in a bit of a soup. Third instrument through which I could get connected. The laptop failed, the desktop failed, and the mobile finally was the savior for the day. Thank you, Dr. Mehta, for the introduction. As because already we started about 5 minutes late, I straight go to the topics. Well, I think we are going to discuss a very important topics in context to the local adaptation in Sunderbans. I think both Indian Sunderbans and Bangladesh Sunderban. And this whole process is also getting important in context to this recently concluded COP26, where these issues have been discussed at length. We have a fabulous panel to discuss this whole agenda. Being privileged to be knowing few of them closely and personally. Dr. Salimul Haq, one of the biggest voices in global climate negotiation, especially from South Asia. And there are many others who are contributing immensely to the whole cause. Before, I don't want to take much time. I just would like to flag off a few issues before we go on kind of hearing the experts. As I understand that each of the experts will be talking for about 15 minutes, and then there will be a presentation for 10 minutes, and then I'll try to round up, and then we'll open to the questions. I just would like to mention a few points. I think we all know that Sunderban is one of the most vulnerable part of the world in context to climate change. If you compare Sunderbans, which is spread between India and Bangladesh, with the countries, with the island countries, you will understand the vulnerability. Sunderbans population density is higher. Sunderbans per capita income is lower. And if you look at the physical part of the climate change, both the long-term climate change and the immediate climate change, Sunderban is one of the topper. If you take the immediate climate change, the storms and cyclones, you will find that Sunderban in last about 100 years, 26% growth in high intensity cyclones. Perhaps the overall cyclone number has remained constant, but the high intensity cyclones has increased. And recently, IMD, Indian Meteorological Department, has come up with a report, a national report, which shows that the return period for cyclone is least in Indian Sunderban. It's about 1.6 years for considering all kinds of cyclones. And if you consider the severe cyclones, it is about 2.6. So that kind of sums up the vulnerability in terms of the kind of immediate nature. And also there has been a study from World Bank, which shows that in Eastern Bank of India, the cyclone, median of cyclone is now shifting from Andhra Pradesh to Orissa and Sunderban. So both in terms of number and also in terms of topographical point, Sunderban has become vulnerable. Then you come to the long-term kind of problem, that's the erosion and the sea level rise. Sunderban sea level rise is about 8 millimeter per year, which is more than double of the global average. And Bangladesh maybe even worse than that. And if you add that Sunderban being a newer area being settling down about 4 millimeter per year, so it's an enormous about 12 millimeter per year. The relative sea level rise is about 12 millimeter per year. And Sunderban in India has seen an erosion of about 210 square kilometer in last 5 decades. 210 square kilometers means an area greater than the city of Calcutta. So that's a part of the vulnerability. And then you add on to that, Sunderban's people, average per capita income is pretty low. And the poverty kind of index in Sunderban is double than the national average. So in one side, you are talking about high level of vulnerability. In other side, you are talking about the low level of resilience. So that prompts a set of experts to propose that you need a mitigation measure. Maybe you need to shift a large amount of population from Sunderban to a safer area to make them less vulnerable. That easier said than done. Sunderban, as I already said, has a population about 4.5 million. And even if you take 25% is vulnerable, you are talking about 1.5 million. It's absolutely impossible to shift this enormous number of people. So really, we need to look at the adaptation measures. How we can kind of minimize the vulnerability, keeping the people in Sunderban where they are. Yes, some people need to be shifted, which are extremely vulnerable, but may not be at the scale some experts are proposing. So what are the possible ways of working on the adaptation measures? I'm just listing few, I'm just flagging on the points, and then we'll keep on discussing. I think one very important part is a joint effort of India and Bangladesh. Since 2010, there has been an initiative on civil society and government level to work together. That has come to a certain level, but that needs to go to the next level. So India, Bangladesh should know from each other, should learn from each other, should unlearn from each other how to go about the adaptation measure. Next is ecotourism. Over the last maybe decade, I have been speaking on camera, actually recording it, wide section of people, from the people on ground to the politician, to the executives and everybody. And one point coming out, the game changer for Sunderban can be legalized proper ecotourism. That can add to the resilience of the local people, and that can actually opens up a lot of other points. So that is another point I would like to know, that whether it is a possibility. Then creating alternate source of livelihood. As of now, the people in Sunderban mainly depend on agriculture, fishery, honey collection for their livelihood. Can we think about other kind of livelihood? For example, something on transportation, water transport, something on ecotourism, maybe some green industries which are not affecting the environment. So that needs to be looked into. Then there is also the mangrove plantation that's being already being done in various places. Whether that is how much doable, because once you put up the mangrove, it takes time to kind of do that. Then the legislative measure, can we take or should we take legislative measures to kind of take into consideration all this? So there is a whole lot of points. I don't want to drag that list. There are a lot of other points. So just flagging on with few pointers, and would like to kind of go directly to the experts to hear what they are going to offer and what they are saying. But finally, I just would like to conclude the initial kind of pointers with this particular, I think I would say, point that to me it's very important for Indian Sunderban and Bangladesh Sunderban to work together, both at the government level, but also at the track 2 level, track 3 level, within the academicians, within the civil society. So how can we take it forward? How practical it is to take forward? We have, as I said, reached to a certain level, but it needs to be further strengthened. So with that, I conclude for the time being, and would like to request Dr. Mehta to see the schedule and request the first speaker to go ahead with his presentation. Thank you.
Maybe you could invite the speakers based on your chronology that you would want to. Up to you, sir.
Okay. I'm right now having not the program with me. The first speaker, who is supposed to be the first speaker?
So, Professor Souvanic Roy.
Professor Souvanic Roy. Great. So, Professor Roy, please start. I know that you have been working in Indian Sunderban for a very important project. So, if we can talk about the Indian Sunderban and how the adaptive measures can be taken, it will be great. So, let's start with Dr. Souvanic Roy. Dr. Roy. Oh,
thank you, Dr.
The floor
Basu.
is yours.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. Thanks to IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, for organizing this very important event and giving me the opportunity for sharing my experiences and thoughts on this. And it is also, it is my privilege to share screen with many of my friends and colleagues with whom we are working for quite some time in this project and previously also. And also Dr. Jayanta Basu, thanks for your for setting the context so well. for this whole discussion. So without, as we know that there is very limited time, and we have a lot to discuss and share. So I'll be just sharing my screen to put things briefly.
So let me share it.
No, I'm just, yeah. So can you see the screen?
Yes, it's working. You can go full screen. Yes, sir.
Yes. So the title of my presentation is COP26 and locally led adaptation in Indian Sunderbans. Very briefly about this background of locally led adaptation. It's a kind of which is being discussed thoroughly in this COP26. It is a new way of building climate resilience that locates the priorities, expertise, and knowledge of local people and institutions who are on the front lines of climate change. And this is actually a growing priority among the governments, among civil society organizations, and also the funding agencies in the COP26. And it is being suggested that the focus should be shifting more from the centralized adaptation and mitigation towards locally led adaptation. And a certain amount of international funding has also been committed, and stage is being set for the funding. But the main question is, will these commitments actually be translating into action, considering the kind of complexities in the landscape and the population? And in that, what is to be done? Let us see what is happening in Indian Sundarban. So as we know that Indian Sundarban is an integral part of the total Sundarban, which is in Bengali language, which is called the forest of beautiful trees, which is a hydrological system, the second largest hydrological system after the Amazon, that is the GBM, Ganges, Brahmaputra, and Meghna Delta. And this Sundarban forest is among the largest mangrove forest, which is also a biodiversity hotspot with hundreds of endangered species and the megafauna of tiger. And this is being declared as a World Heritage Site, reflecting its conservation importance. And also there is a long history of coexistence of man and nature and animal. For almost the written history shows that almost we have 2,500 years or more of coexistence of man and nature. And in Indian part, it is about 4.5 million people, which is one of the dense, very high density region in terms of the forest ecosystem. So if you see that the complex landscape is actually represented through the dynamics and the deficiencies in the delta. So as I was telling, and as Professor Basu was also mentioning, that it is a rich biodiversity with mega and microfauna, flora, but it is also a fragile ecology with rising erosion and salinity. The number of climate hazards are increasing every day. And it is also an ecosystem which comprises of multiple sub-ecosystems, which is very unique feature of aquatic and terrestrial sub-ecosystems and multiple occupations. And also it is inhabited by a large section of very poor population, not only in terms of income, but also in terms of the below poverty line population, with almost 70% do not have agricultural lands. And also due to the frequent hazards, cyclones, storm surge, and flooding, just a recent survey data shows that almost 20% of the households of the population have now migrated out. So which is actually a major concern, which is being actually shown as a kind of coping strategy or a adaptation strategy. But there's a big question around that, whether the kind of coping strategy what population is adopting, that it's actually helping the families to survive or creating new kind of problems, social problems, and other kind of family related problems. Because many of the students, very recently we have done a survey in Goshaba, where the headmaster of the school was telling that 75% of the children who were during the lockdown period 75% of the children, their parents have moved out. So that's the kind of situation which we are now confronting with, along with the climate hazards. So if you see the coping strategies or adaptation measures, these are some of the glimpses of this, that the continuous submergence of agricultural lands and homestead lands and fisheries, collapsing embankments, which are also very major issue in the area. The collapse of very rudimentary mud houses, mud and thatch houses, which is the 70% of the houses in this region are mud, and precarious drinking water situation where almost the women are forced to move almost at least 3-4 kilometers away from their home when there is a kind of environmental stress or hazards. And this is a 2019 hazard vulnerability map, which shows the coastal blocks of Sagar, Namkhana, Pathor Pratima, Kakdeep, and also the other 7 or 8 forest buffer blocks like Goshaba, Bashanti, Hingalganj. They are highly high and very high vulnerability because of erosion, and also due to the changing resource base, and also the intense man-animal conflict because of regular interface of the entry of local population or forest-dependent population into the forest because of the scarcity of other livelihood options. So the coping strategies, what we see here, are also quite well known, and photographs are available all around the newspapers and in social media. That's the kind of community involvement in the embankment restoration, with very local material of mud, the protection of houses by using a rudimentary construction of covering with tarpaulin sheets or very little amount of resources what they have, conversion of agricultural lands due to the rising salinity towards prawn cultivation and fisheries. And also there are, with the help of the NGOs and civil society organizations, there are also some renewable energy devices like the photovoltaic cells for alternative energy sources. Now, what we see in the present situation, particularly for last 1 year or so, we are finding the state responses are mostly on hard infrastructure, like the emphasis is on building of cyclone shelters and to earn revenue from tourism, roads and bridges and other things. So that is what most of the interventions are hard infrastructure centric, and relief measures, just the public distribution system, and just to keep the people alive in terms of the rural employment guarantee scheme, cash transfers. And what is interesting in the recently, which probably Dr. Basu will also appreciate, that now even the concrete embankment has become a buzzword among the local communities who are earlier not really asking for concrete embankment. They were asking for permanent embankment, but now their aspiration has shifted towards concrete. So it's like that the concrete is being equated with permanence. So that's a very, but it's really a kind of question which is looming large, whether the concrete is really the option, considering the kind of changing river courses and other issues which are the prime problems in the region. Whereas the multiple aid agencies like World Bank or ADB and Conservation Lobby, they have a very different perception about this area, and they have the conservation focus in the area. So they are talking mostly about the managed retreat, that is partial relocation of the population so that there will be reduced dependence on forest to reduce the conflict. So what we see is the kind of the kind of conflicts. On one hand, for revenue generation, a lot of construction is happening in Sunderban in terms of tourism, in terms of road infrastructure. And also what we see here is the kind of erosion, which is also a continuous thing. So people are caught between two conflicting realities. One hand, there is a need for urge or quest for economic growth in the region, for better livelihoods, whereas this area is an exceptional ecological value, which reaches richest ecosystems of the world. So that is what bringing us to the political and development narrative in last 3 decades. What we see in present situation, that last 3 decades with the advent, with the rising globalization and the changing of societal aspirations or improvement in connectivity or integration with market, the societal values have changed a lot. And which was earlier, which was a community which had a lot of good cohesive forces and a lot of shared understanding about the forest, that is gradually being eroded. So that is one thing which is really a concern. And on the other hand, the prevailing governance approach, what we see, the term which I can use is called the governmentality, which is used by French philosopher Michel Foucault in the end of 1970s, which is more like a kind of a technocratic approach to governance, which is more hard infrastructure centric, and where community will be probably always at the receiving end, or also which is probably shrinking space of community to voice their opinion. And it is kind of establishing a patron-client relationship where government is like giving, delivering certain infrastructure, and they are just the beneficiary kind of syndrome. So this is a situation where there is complexity of issues because of conservation issues, because of economic growth related aspirations, and also there are diversity of desires from multiple occupations. So what I personally feel is that there is a need for paradigm change in the governance approach from governmentality or centralized kind of approach, which is apparently rational, but creating a kind of multiplying the conflicts among the issues and the diversity of desires. So that should actually lead to more towards community-led adaptation. Now, I do not mean that community-led adaptation is actually replace some macro level policy issues, but I'm not touching today the macro level policy issues or macro level structural interventions, but I'd be primarily talking about the 3 agenda or pathways towards community-led adaptation, which should be complementary to the macro level governance. So this, I call it as pathways for community-led adaptation. So the first one is about decision-making or planning to understand the local problems, the community problem analysis by using the different kind of participatory mapping tools to identify and assess the problems from a local perspective, local community perspective, and local institutions perspective. And based on that, what will be the kind of development options and solutions. So that is one in terms of envisaging or understanding the problem and finding out alternatives, and through community or engagement or community or collaborative engagement, which is actually completely missing in present situation, particularly in Indian Sunderban. Second is, which is very important in the community-led adaptation, is the resource allocation. And here we have in India many southern states like Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and others. They're trying in rural governance and also in urban governance. That's called participatory budgeting. It's like untied fund coming to the place, and the allocation is done based on community feedback or community requirement assessment. Where Sunderban, as I understand now, almost 1,000 crore is the kind of total all department budget in Indian Sunderban, but hardly anything comes to the community level to decide what kind of allocation needs according to their requirements. So, and finally, for community-led adaptation, Sunderban has a good legacy of cooperatives. Like even we had earlier the Goshaba cooperatives, which was actually established by Hamilton, the Britisher who came here. And also in present context, we have many civil society organizations. They are working in the cooperative sector. And we have a very good women group, which is Sundarini Milk, the cooperative. And there are many forest eco-development committees in the forest. So for forest dependent communities, the EDCs can be the good entry point for strengthening and capacity building. And there are many SHGs. In fact, when I started the work in Sunderban, say 15, 20 years back, the SHGs were quite vibrant. But what I'm finding in last 20 years or 2 decades, as I told, with the approach of governmentality, these SHGs have become just like an appendage or just like a dependent on the state for their survival and for their finding their markets, which I think there's a need to change that. So I just like to conclude that local communities are on the front line of climate change impacts. And these communities and also the local institutions, the rural institutions, the panchayats, the many community-based institutions are there, including the local women groups. They do not have much of a voice in the decisions that are affecting them, particularly in terms of the kind of development model which is being actually working over there. So there is a need to shift the kind of status quo from current top-down governmentality approach or hard infrastructure-centric approach towards community-led adaptation, which is actually a local adaptation, where they will have greater power and resources for decision making, and also the to envisage the kind of future they like to have for them and for their next generation, so that the development can shift, the development model can shift from a kind of a linear progression towards more of a transformative resilience, which I think is the main objective of community-led adaptation. Instead of a linear approach, it would be more like an iterative and internalized approach. So I like to stop here and would like to listen to other participants and speakers, and also for future questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Roy, for a very, very illuminating presentation. And we are really, really thankful to you that you have really flagged on key points. I really would like to kind of talk about that later, but let us first hear the other opinions. Let me go straight down to Professor Andy Large. Professor Large is a professor of river science in Newcastle University, UK, and is being part of he's the principal investigator and director of a very important project of the Living Delta Hub project. I know closely that how well that is working. So sometimes it's good to have a view from outside. Sometimes when we work, say Professor Roy said that he has been working there for 2 decades, people like us, perhaps working there for a long, long time. Sometimes we kind of get strangled by the localities. So sometimes it's good to have a view from outside that kind of shows certain things which we may be missing out inside. So over to Professor Large for your view, and really, really great to hear your views about Sunderban and its adaptation. Over to Dr. Large.
Thank you very much, Dr. Basu, and thank you for the welcome today. And I would emphasize at the beginning, I'm actually actively working with a number of our speakers today, which is great, because it does mean that we get that local expertise. So we're actually working with Souvanic, Manoj, and Salim in terms of the speakers coming up, so which is great. What I want to briefly do is just to very quickly give a description of the Living Deltas Hub and the work we're covering, but also to try and put that in some reflections from COP26 to try and bring the conversation on in terms of what the main challenges are coming up. The Living Deltas Hub is a transdisciplinary hub. We work for transformative change. So we have over 20 institutions globally working from 10 countries for this agenda. Where we work is in in the Ganges-Brahmaputra-Meghna Delta in India and Bangladesh. So we're working on the Sunderbans World Heritage Site. In Vietnam, we're also working on the Red River Delta and also on the Mekong Delta. And then we have colleagues working further upstream in Cambodia too. So what we're also trying to do is recognize that there is a need for transdisciplinary learning, transboundary learning, but also to reflect the fact that globally, deltas are among, as Salim Al-Hook would say, the first climate change adapters. The people at the front line, and there's a lot that the world can learn from these people. And this is something that the Hub is moving towards over our 5-year period. We've been quite poorly affected by COVID, as has everybody, but we're now ready for 2 years, quite intensive work in the next 2 years to achieve our objectives. So in effect, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with natural cultural heritage. This was a key driver of the Hub as we formed it. We have many members on the Hub who have been prominent members of previous Delta consortia, but no previous Delta consortia has really emphasized natural cultural heritage as being a key sort of focal point, a lens through which we view the future. And this is key when we see, as Dr. Basu said already, that the Sunderbans are one ecosystem. We need to therefore recognize that we need to develop from locally rooted knowledge, because that underpins locally led adaptation. And importantly, we need to share co-created knowledge with communities. And again, Souvanic mentioned this in terms of trying to get more horizontal power relationships rather than vertical in terms of transboundary sharing. That is very important. So we're trying to do that in the Hub, and we're dealing with a range of different aspects. This diagram simply shows the visual minutes from a previous project, which is still just completing a Newton-funded project on ecological resilience of the Indian Sunderban. But we had the key point there was that we just weren't restricting ourselves to Indian delegates. We were having early career researchers from India and Bangladesh, because this is one ecosystem with a range of different social ecological aspects to it. And key in that is listening to the voices of the Delta. So this sort of reflected the range of discussions that we had in a room in Newcastle. We couldn't travel to the Sunderbans because of COVID, I'm afraid, but we did the best we could, and we had virtual plenaries and brought everybody together, and we'll be working forward for ecological resilience. So key questions we need to ask are how are the deltas changing? What are the key drivers of change, and what are the consequences of that change? We've seen already the mention of that significant sea level rise figure, the difficulties, in fact, the impossibility of moving people in significant numbers. And therefore, what are the consequences of change, not just for those communities, but for the governance aspects for deltas? We know already that we're living in altered systems. This is Vietnam, where the traditional statement of living with floods is now changed to a new sort of motto almost of living with floods, brackish water and salt water, reflecting that saline intrusion is changing the very basis on which traditional delta livelihoods, and even more recent ones, decades-wise, in terms of the rapid increase in rice and shrimp, etc., in terms of agricultural initiatives, these are changing all the time. And they're changing because we're seeing huge biodiversity loss on these deltas, and climate change is altering the rules of everything that we work under. So in terms of looking for delta futures and transformative futures, we need to learn from livelihood experiences across the deltas. And this is what we're doing in Vietnam, in India and Bangladesh. We're seeking to work with delta communities to build more adaptive futures with them and not for them. We're seeking to really base our understanding on locally rooted knowledge. But as Salim Al-Hook would say, that focus on adaptation was not a COP26 outcome. Again, it was business as usual in many ways. There was a very disappointing outcome for adaptation in terms of the argument between mitigation and adaptation, the amount of global finance that moves towards mitigation rather than adaptation. And there's a real need, therefore, to redress that balance. I'm sure Salim will talk in much more knowledgeable terms about that coming up, so I won't dwell on that one. Capacity strengthening, that's been mentioned already today. in terms of working with communities, the hub seeks to work with the most vulnerable and marginalized communities, and following again the SDG agenda of no one being left behind. But again, as we know, that was not a very good COP26 outcome. The 48, most less developed countries left Glasgow feeling rather let down in terms of the way the agenda had panned out in favor of the geopolitics of large-scale announcements from that forum. And raising the voices of the Delta dwellers, which is a key aspect of what we do in the hub, was not a COP26 outcome. The voices of the people who are at the front line of climate change were kept muted at Glasgow. And this is something that hopefully the COP27, which is based in Africa, in Egypt, will be able to sort of redress slightly. In terms of moving forward, equitable partnerships are key for transformative Delta futures. Again, those equitable partnerships, as I've just illustrated, were not really a COP26 outcome. So locally led adaptation is a key way forward. We need to see that Delta dwellers as amongst the first climate change adapters. We need to see them as the next generation of global leaders, being able to sort of translate experiences to other countries. Because, for example, in Britain, we have low-lying landscapes, which are a distinct threat from climate change, but we don't learn from anywhere else in the world, and we need to do that. So locally led adaptation is key. Again, this has been mentioned already in terms of some of the approaches in terms of large-scale changes. I think Souvanic mentioned this in terms of some of the mitigation of changes are, for example, when we get an impact, we tend to get a precautionary approach, an intervention which is large-scale to manage risk over the whole project life. And an example would be that seawall. But we need to move towards more adaptive ways of managing these landscapes. A number of interventions over time, properly scaled solutions, also based on locally led knowledge. That's an absolute must. And there are emerging principles for this. Again, I'm sure Salim will talk about these, but we're getting quite involved in these in the hub in terms of how we can move our agenda. The advantage of a research hub of our scale and size is that we can begin to take account of emerging narratives and agendas and begin to bring our critical mass to bear in terms of trying to have some impact on that. And so we're getting involved with ICAD, for example, in terms of the principles for locally led adaptation. And I won't go into those ones, but a key one is the one on the top left there, devolving decision-making to the lowest appropriate level. That underpins everything else in the other 8 and in the other 7. It's extremely important. So in those principles, the hub is working on across scales. We're looking at ecosystem services, otherwise known as nature's life support systems, and the way that those underpin products and processes on the deltas and how that might change in terms of climate change and those pressures. We're involved in mangrove restoration across our study areas in terms of monitoring and quantifying landscape scale losses, aligning restoration with sustainable agricultural practice, recognizing that it's not a matter of simply replanting, that we have to recognize that natural cultural heritage is changing all the time and that we need to build in initiatives with those moving agendas. We're working on food systems and security. And again, this is extremely important with the pressures that the Sunderbans are under in terms of the need for more sustainable agriculture and aquaculture. These are shrimp ponds, and when these go in, that's the end of the delta's landscape in terms of a cultural system in that sense, but also the rich biodiversity, as you can see, suffers badly. And we're looking at climate change resilient organic farming as a key part of our activity going forward. We're looking at vulnerability and risk. We're again looking at livelihood choices across our 4 delta social ecological systems. We're modeling risk, and we're also looking at the costs of that in terms of cost-benefit analysis of different approaches, because if governments, whether large G or small g, think that things are not a cost-benefit, then it's extremely hard to get that policy underway. And key for that then is communication from the outset with delta dwellers and with policymakers alike on an equitable footing to deal with these shared wicked problems of climate change. So we're looking at science of the deltas. We're putting in new monitoring where monitoring wasn't there. We're looking at capacity strengthening where monitoring is current. We're looking at expanding monitoring through community-based science. So working with communities to understand their environments, the local ponds, etc., the groundwater. But on a larger scale, for example, the Indian Sunderbans are very poorly monitored, and that's hopefully one legacy of our hub activity will be a program in place. We're looking at, again, at principles in terms of youth and gender and identifying the next generation of leaders, particularly in terms of climate change. And then the whole hub agenda, along with the other 11 GCRF hubs, is underpinned by the UNDP and the Sustainable Development Goals. We're seeking to localize the SDGs, to build partnerships for the goals, and this is extremely important. If we take the hitherto view of the SDGs, where society and economy are neatly nested in a sort of warm and welcoming environment, we know that that is not happening in our world today. And where partnerships are sort of things that come out of all of that sort of nested approach. That's the Stockholm Resilience Centre. We take an alternative view where we need to underpin a resilient biosphere through better, more equitable societies, more circular economies at scale, and that's extremely important to bear in mind. We need to build the partnerships from the outset between policymakers, academics, NGOs, communities, and global funders to build better partnerships, and only then will we begin to move towards more resilient biospheres. We won't get that as a sort of bottom ring of the wedding cake where society and economy sits in that. It just will not happen. So we need the partnerships. SDG 17 is a key one, and there is an 18th SDG, in my view, that's missing, which is culture. Because without an appreciation of culture and place and a sense of place, sustainability is extremely hard to achieve. And my final slide then is trying to build it all together. We know there are compounding risks of climate change and socioeconomic development in the Sunderban. We know that there are urgent challenges for the lives and livelihoods and for the land and water resources of the Sunderban. We know that the human resources and the capacities in those delta landscapes need maintaining and strengthening. And we argue that the solutions must be cultural heritage sensitive, and they must be devolved to the lowest possible level as soon as possible. In terms of that nexus of land, water, energy, and food, we need action to better understand the drivers and the spatial temporal dynamics of change. What timescales are we anticipating this change if we're thinking about moving anybody, never mind 1.5 million people? If we're thinking at 25% of the population, we need that monitoring in place and scenario development so that we can begin to translate what's happening on the deltas and in the Sundarbans in particular. So we need a systems perspective across the current boundary between India and Bangladesh, recognizing we are dealing with one ecosystem, to look at predicted drivers of change on that ecosystem, to look at trade-offs and synergies, and to support holistic planning across both countries for resilient and adaptive delta futures in the Sunderban. And that, in effect, needs co-created, people-centered solutions, addressing the needs and aspirations of those who live on those deltas. So we need increased data sharing from the outset between governments, agencies, funding organizations, and scientists. We need better open access mechanisms to make findings more accessible and impactful. We need better frameworks, decision support tools, but also action-oriented research with the clearly identified beneficiaries of that evidence-based policy. And my final point is that dialogue is key, and the equitable collaborations are key, because these are involving the global first adapters, and that's critical for building resilience too and planning for climate change. So I'll leave it there, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Large, for the wonderful, wonderful presentation. Really, really thankful for the presentation. I am sure that we'll be discussing major pointers later, but the major takeaways from me are 3 points. One is the transboundary initiative we have been talking about. I think that's an extremely important component because of the lopsided proportionality of imports of Sundarban in India and Bangladesh. In India, Sunderban is just a very small component and often doesn't get the importance at the central level. In Bangladesh, it's extremely important, major contributor in GDP. So that's much more important. So how we can actually balance this and have a combined voice. When you look at Africa, 15 countries talking together about Africa. But in some Sunderban, we are not talking together. So that's a very important point. We should discuss this later. Another is ecosystem services. And if we talk about ecosystem services, then the people who are there should be ecosystem warriors. So if Sunderban is providing ecosystem services to rest of the West Bengal and also in Bangladesh, what they are getting in return. So that's extremely important part. The third point you mentioned about the culture, the importance of recognizing culture vis-a-vis SDG 17. Often we miss out this small cogs in the wheel. We look at the dominating physical adaptation measures, but we tend to kind of go beyond this smaller points, which is extremely important as well. So thank you for raising this. We'll be discussing it. Thank you. So without much ado, I just go over to Professor Salim Ul-Haq now. Professor Haq needs no introduction, and one of the major voices that I already said. Professor Haq is the Director, International Center for Climate Change and Development, ICAD, Professor of Independent University of Bangladesh, and I'm sure that he's going to talk about Bangladesh Sunderban, but I'm really very keen to know from him that in context of the COP26 and kind of a bit of a enlargement of the Global Adaptation Fund, how it is possible to link that fund to the adaptation processes in Bangladesh and India. Over to Professor Haq.
Thank you very much, Jayanta, and thank you to IMPRI for organizing this important event and inviting me. So let me start with a quick reflection on COP26, which from my perspective was a very bad COP because it did not rise to the challenge of the existential threat that loss and damage is now happening because of climate change. Not going to happen, is already happening. In the last few days, 3 cyclones in succession have hit the island of Madagascar and the country of Mozambique, one after the other within a matter of days. The UK just had a big cyclone hurricane as well. So everywhere is seeing this now. It is inevitable, and the COP26 leaders decided to ignore it. So in that sense, a bad COP. On the other hand, not to be totally negative, there were some positives that came out, and I think we need to build on that. The first positive was a recognition that there had not been enough investment in adaptation and that there needs to be a lot more. The developed countries offered to double their funding for adaptation, which is a good thing. They also have to make it more effective, which they have not done in the past. So that is something that we will be definitely looking at in terms of how effectively they use that money to go to the most vulnerable. And the past experience does not bode well unless they recognize their mistakes and improve their performance. And at the same time, there was a big new initiative, I won't say brand new, but relatively new initiative on nature-based solutions, which is very relevant for our discussion in the context of the Sunderbans and Bangladesh and India. So I agree with everything that has already been said by the various speakers. I won't repeat any of them. They are all very learned people. They know much more than I do about the details and the nitty-gritty. So what I will offer are 3 forward-looking viewpoints in terms of how do we overcome the barriers that we know exist? How do we tackle the problems that are getting worse, not getting better? And so we need to think out of the box. Business as usual has not worked. So we need to think out of the box. So I'll start with a couple of things that we are doing. As you know, we organize a platform called Gobeshona. For non-Bangla speakers, that's a Bangla word for research. It's a big platform in Bangladesh now with over 50 universities. We have international universities as well, so I'll invite my colleagues from India to join up. And although we started off as a Bangladeshi platform of research NGOs and universities, we have now broadened it to a global platform on locally led adaptation in particular. And this happened last year because of the COVID restrictions. We used to have an in-person conference at my university in Dhaka for many years. Because of COVID, we couldn't do that. So we went virtual. And by virtue of going virtual, we also went global. And we had sessions from all over the world. We ran it 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days. We had nearly 100 sessions from all over the world. And we have had such a good success that we are now going to stay that way. Even after COVID restrictions are over, we're not going to the in-person conference modality anymore. We are staying virtual, and the next conference is going to be from the 27th of March. And I'm sure there will be quite a few sessions on Sunderbans and deltas already. We've already invited session organizers. If any of you are interested and you have not sent in a session application, please do so very quickly. I'm sure we will be able to accommodate it. And that will bring together people who are working at local level. The emphasis is on local voices, local adapters who already know what they're doing, are doing adaptation, and we need to learn from them and then see how we can help them from the outside. We are outsiders. They are the people who are bearing the brunt of the impacts, and we need to learn from them. That is our global conference. Incidentally, the theme of this year's conference is how do we connect the local to the global, not just going to the COP and doing a side event, which is what most people do, but actually influencing the decision making at the COP, which we don't do. We are outsiders in the COP process. How do we become better at being insiders? That's the question that we want to challenge ourselves to. And the outcome of the Gobeshona conference is, what do we want to see in COP27 and how do we make it happen? Not go to Sharm el-Sheikh and do a side event. That does not do anything except a little bit of networking, which is good, but it has no influence whatsoever on the process. The process has already started. In fact, I tell people who are interested in influencing the COP, don't go to the COP. Go to the SB meeting in Germany in June, where the agenda for the COP is going to be set in motion and put in place. If you can influence the SB decision, then you have already influenced the COP decision, because going to the COP, you don't have much scope to change what the SB, the subsidiary bodies, have already set in motion. So going to Germany for the SB is actually much more tactically better if you want to influence the COP. The other advantage of that is that it is not a huge meeting like the COP is, and you have the opportunity to actually meet negotiators, talk to them, have a cup of coffee with them, which in the COP is impossible. You hardly meet anybody. It's such a big jamboree. So we will be doing that. So we are going to be focusing on actually influencing the decision in COP27 from these local adapters from all over the world, not just from our part of the world. That's number one. Number two, I think there's an opportunity here for all of us on this call and all of our colleagues to join forces and be better at getting messages across to decision makers. But I would say, in addition to advocating for politicians and leaders, in your case, national as well as central leaders, as well as provincial leaders in West Bengal, in our case, national leaders and local leaders in Khulna, is that we also need to be better organized as civil society, as researchers, as academics, and as media. I think we don't do a good enough job of connecting ourselves across the border that divides us. Many of you are Bengali speakers. Amra Eipar Bangla, Oipar Bangla, Amra ekshate kaj korte parbo kina? Eta hocche amar proshno. Ami mone kori kora jabe. So let us think about how can we be more effective in joining forces ourselves and seeing how we can be better at getting the changes that we need to have happen, and get the decision makers who have to make those changes to make those decisions themselves. And my final point is actually what keeps me going and optimistic despite all the pessimism and negative activities and actions, the climate actions that are happening, and the lack of actions by politicians that are facing them, is that my faith is in the next generation. And they are an untapped force of phenomenal power that both sides of the border we have. Young girls and young boys are our foundational puji amader. এই বৃহত্তর পুঁজি, এটাকে আমরা সদ্ব্যবহার করি না. We give them the wrong kind of education and they become কর্মচারী and white collar jobs and so on. That's the wrong kind of education. We need to be educating girls and boys, and I emphasize girls more than boys, because educating girls has a multiplier effect in terms of benefits to society many times educating boys. Educate boys is good for them, they have a good career, they make money, but educate a girl and then it's better for society. She will look after children, she will look after the society before she looks after herself. And if we can change the education system, which is in our hands, we're educators, let us see if we can use the location of the Sunderban that cuts across the border in India and Bangladesh to work with the schools, work with the colleges, work with the young girls and boys, and give them a different kind of education and make them into climate champions, not victims. The victimhood narrative we should give away. It's no longer a valid narrative. We must strive for leadership narrative. We can solve the problem. We can deal with the problem. We can be better at doing it, not only for ourselves in our part of the world, for the whole world, for the rest of the world. They can learn from us and we can teach them if we do it right. And I do believe we can do it right. And if we do it wrong, then we'll lose a generation of young people. They will be miseducated like we have been miseducated in our generation. We must not let that happen again. We have a very, very thriving, and this is not a division. It's not between India and Bangladesh. It's both of us. Your children, your young people, our young people, all of them. The education we need to give to them is the same education. We don't need alada alada kore dorkar nai. So I really do want us to think about how do we instill a new kind of education, starting with the universities, where many of us are professors. We are familiar with that territory, but it's a very difficult thing to change. Universities are very ossified structures. They don't like changing. But let us see if we can change them. And then at the college level, and then at the high school level, and even at the primary school level. But the important thing is not so much the curriculum, but how we instill a thirst for knowledge, an ability in the students, the inherent ability of the students, which we actually drum out of them. The way we teach them to pass exams and rote learning, it drums out of them all the creativity they had. The point that Andy made about culture, to me, that's culture. That's our kids. We need to make them a more cultured citizens of their own countries, but cultured citizens of the world at the same time. So let me leave that thought with all of you to see whether we might be able to come up with some ideas in our own place, how we can do it, and then linking up with each other and with others, how we can make it a much bigger movement than it is. Just let me end by saying I've been in touch with the Fridays for Future young kids. They go on strike every Friday, and I have persuaded them to launch a campaign for raising funds for loss and damage, the victims of loss and damage. And they will do that. And I've asked all the school kids from all over the world, it doesn't matter which country they come from, rich or poor, to donate their lunch money to a fund for loss and damage. Every child will come out of school, not immediately, we'll plan it for a little while, but in the coming months, they will have a special Friday for funding loss and damage, and every school child will give their lunch money contributed to a fund for the victims of loss and damage. The leaders are not doing anything, but let the children shame the leaders into taking action. I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Hogg, as usual, a wonderful presentation. Not only wonderful presentation, I think you have opened up the direction to respond to the situation. And that's more important. We often talk about the oft-repeated problems and all these things, but to come out with the solution, at least showing the options on table is very important. And I'm really thankful to you for putting up a lot of options on table and to respond to that. 2-3 points are extremely important. You spoke about a nature-based solution in Sunderban. I think extremely important. Definitely we'll be discussing it later. You also talked about leadership. I think, again, a very important component. I think leadership gives you a sense of ownership and also a sense of kind of a resilience. When you are talking about we are all losers, people also tend to think in that manner. I have seen somebody in Bangladesh that how he's building up his own kind of small house once it's being washed out, and he's fine. He said, okay, it has happened. Okay, let me respond to it. So I think I'm talking about Ghoramara Island in close to Sagar Island in Indian Sunderbans. And during the Yas cyclone, almost the entire kind of island washed away. They came back and have this Durga Puja next time. So that talks about the resilience. So really wonderful. I think this leadership concept of yours is extremely important, and definitely we'll be going back to that. I'm really looking forward to further response from you later in the day. But as of now, let me go over to Professor Manoj Roy. Professor Roy is Assistant Professor in Sustainability, Lancaster University, UK. Professor Roy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Jayanta, and all the speakers who has eloquently explained both very rich detail about the situation on the ground, as well as some of the very global thinking. So it's like Professor Hawk was really, asking for educating the future generation. I'm sort of still in that bracket, so I'll be talking more of question rather than sort of trying to put some answer to all these big questions being asked. So first of the things I was trying to sort of really reflect on our role in this whole debate. What are we able to or are doing? Conceptually, we are actually research activists. We kind of go there, we're trying to promote responses as well as document success and failures, and try to even taking Andy's discussion about trying to make scenarios, try to understand the pathway, whose directions we are going. So we are doing two things together. We're doing research, but more importantly, we are also catalyzing activism. Now, when we actually talk in that sense of activism, conducting activism, then comes the question of, are we able to produce what is needed to change on the ground? And that is what this big idea of politics comes in. And Souvanic was mentioning some of the established thinker about governmentality, the politics, and this. But I think if we go back and sort of really ask, what is politics, or what is politics made out of? Is it a really bad thing, or is it something can we escape? Now, in our role as research activists, we cannot often engage with politics. Politics needs an issue, and politics needs an issue to be made to the public. So it needs a public, and it needs an issue. At the moment, we can see that we are, Dr. Salimul Huq's thinking that we are sort of good at, trying to do side events in COP. And if you kind of see how COP is, it's almost like a binary of delegates from the global south, and then big powerful delegates from the global north. There's often a very, very difficult conversation goes on. But the greater public on the ground, the politics on the ground is not played at this big event. Here, international politics are played. Now, I'm very excited with this idea of locally led adaptation because it brings politics to where it matters. Now, if we actually think from a research activist level, we may sometimes be at risk of mistaking the ground politics, because we need to create the issue that we are talking about, we are concerned about on the ground. People need to come really situating that issue in the public domain. They need to cluster around the issues that is on there. And that is where I think, locally led adaptation brings a lot of prospect. But this also has a lot of challenges. Again, that's what I was meaning to ask the more question than the answer. So one of the questions to me is that how do we actually mediate this politics formation? Now, mediation has many different roles, but most important role is that it will address the conflict. Okay, so we know that we have got government, and in this case, we have government both in Bangladesh and India. They have their own political ideology of how things should work and who should be allowed to live. That is like necropolitics, this new idea being coined, is that who is allowed to die, who is allowed to suffer from the politics that is being played. And that is a government politics. But we need to sort of make politics issue-based. And many of the issues that Souvanic pointed at is developmental issues. So if we actually can do development in a better way, many of these problems probably would be solved. So we are actually going back to the same circle of doing development better. And that then actually helps us doing adaptation better. Now on this point, when we are actually talking about development, there is this another question. What we have seen in Bangladesh, in some of the cyclones, that, what Souvanic shows that there is a demand for now concrete embankment. In Bangladesh, we had earthen embankment that was doing a good job, but it was not maintained properly. It was not maintained, it was leaked through to bringing the hot Andy shows the saline water to help the shrimp farming within the protected areas. So that comes that the governance or the mediation has two different roles. On the one hand, constantly revitalize the issue, constantly revitalize the collective around those issues that need addressing, but also really maintaining a system of depreciation and replenishment. So depreciation is really the economic term, and it's always very, you can see that very established in well-performing businesses. But if we come into our landscapes, we do not actually pay attention to that. Things that we put on the ground are being used. And that's why their utility, their use value is getting down. So we need to sort of really pump in, sort of to replenish what is being used. And we do not see this happen. I think this depreciation and replenishment could be considered quite a sort of technical term, but I think this locally led adaptation is bringing even more broader terms. That Salim al-Haq has already mentioned about the young generation. Okay, so this young generation need to be educated to be appreciating what is going on in the society, but more importantly, they're being asked to contribute back to the society. And in the locally led adaptation, how local could we go? And then how do we actually get these things done and implemented within the local system? And there needs to be a systematic way of financing, replenishing, and so forth. It goes on. It does not end in a limited, sort of electoral cycle period. It needs to go on. Yes, I think I would like to sort of really finish by asking another question, really, is that this COP and the global debates where we see a wrangling between the delegates from the global north and global south, but how could we actually bring the local politics formation into it? How do we see that the issue is formed on the ground and raised and then really created a situation whereby the global leaders cannot escape meeting this one? My question is that if global is too big to realize, should we not really think about this local-led adaptation also has a big role to actually support the politics formation? I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Roy. It's extremely important points you raised about the politics. Yes, I think Sundarbans is a lot about politics, and it's also interesting to find, at least in Indian part of Sundarban, there's a very clear difference between the Indian Sundarban and Bangladesh Sundarban. In Bangladesh Sundarban, people live around Sundarban. They are dependent on Sundarban, but they are not really part of Sundarban in that way the Indian Sundarban is. In Indian Sundarban, you crisscross between a wild island and a human habited island. So in Indian Sundarban, as because perhaps due to the kind of an island structure, you will not find a more heterogeneous political spread the Sundarban has like the other parts of West Bengal. That's a very, very important point. I'm thankful to you that you've raised it, because unless we take into account that kind of heterogeneity and political process, I think to put the local adaptations on ground is very difficult. And you also mentioned the importance of linking with the locally led adaptations with the political process. Extremely important because of the Panchayati Raj system that we have, and we need to integrate that. I think extremely important point. So I now would like to go over to the presentation that we are supposed to have. I think Dr. Upashana Ghosh and Dr. Debojyoti Das, they are going to make a joint presentation. It's about 10 minutes, because after that, then we'll have a discussion within the panelists, and then over to the kind of open discussion, open floor discussion. So very quickly, Dr. Debojyoti Das and Dr. Upashana Ghosh for your presentation. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Basu. So let me share my screen. So is it visible?
Yes, we can see it. Ma'am, you can also go full screen.
Yes, just a second.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, IMPRI, to invite me to speak about our projects in Sunderbans. And definitely, I will not repeat those words which my stalwart seniors has already been discussed. So let me just define that where we left the discussions few minutes back by Dr. Roy and Dr. Basu, that there is a difference between India and Bangladesh Sundarbans. So in Bangladesh, Sundur means the reserve forest, but in India, so it means the entire reserve forest incorporating the human settlements. So in Bangladesh, it is an ecologically critical area, and there is no buffer zone in the contrary in India. So in Bangladesh also, it's predominantly inhabited by the rural population, whereas the Indian part of Sundarbans, it's urban and rural, and there is a close impact of globalization. So which is the climate change impact, which is the globalization impacts, these are very overlapped in Indian part of Sundarbans. So, but basically in terms of policy making, this is very important because there is no definite unified landscape of Sunderbans so far the Delta is concerned. So if you talk about the locally laid adaptations to climate change, not about what the COP26 has said, but we need to have a close view of the people, the culture, and what they are lived experience of everyday life. So definitely this entire society of Sunderbans is in transition. So the first, they were a self-sufficient economy. Now they are more to a market-dependent one. So there is a transition from the farmers, fishers to wage laborer, because most of them had to migrate because of the dwindling of the traditional agricultural livelihood, and they have to migrate to other places. In Bangladesh, it is from Sundarbans to Dhaka, And in Indian part, it is from the rural Sunderbans to the other states of the country. So basically the transitions from the fruit producer to fruit consumers is a big change. That is one reason, definitely climate change. The other reason is definitely the overlapping globalizations. There is a continuous mobile population between two countries, and legal, illegal. There are a lot of issues regarding that political boundary. There is a transition also in the nature worship to the mainstream religion, because during my research also I have seen, or we are still discussing with the people, that Bone Bibi, the cult of Bone Bibi, is basically losing her stronghold, because the people's shifting, the nature-based relationship is shifting towards a casual laboring. So people are tend to get involved more with the mainstream religions, both the Hindus and Muslims in the both Indian and Bangladesh part. So this is another important transitions, and definitely the locally led adaptations have a lot of implications within this context. So this population, basically the Sundarbans populations, are trapped between the rural and urban life dynamics. As I mentioned, the Indian part of Sundarbans, the main town, Kolkata, is only 150 kilometers, and the urbanizations process is increasing towards the Sundarbans. So these dynamics are making people in a transition, making the society of Sundarbans in transitions, and the people are kind of perplexed, uncertain to how to behave, and what to adopt and how to adopt. So there are major initiatives for transformation, both India and Bangladesh. So it's a salinity resistant crops, brackish aquaculture, crab cultivations, training for girls and women's alternatives, livelihoods. So I'm not gonna go for details in it, but there are some sustainability components in each of these adaptation initiatives, because most of them are based on the traditional local knowledge and practice. So it has the potential to create alternatives, potential resource to distribute across the various sections of the communities. It is, in many cases, it is gender inclusive, because it's one of the big reason is the women who are present within the islands, they are, due to the patriarchal norm, they are not going out from the out of the Sunderbans. So, but however, in our research project also, we are still yet to understand that how transformative and how resilient, how sustainable is these initiatives are. So regarding the voices of the community, we, in both of our projects, so presently we are doing 2 projects in Sundarbans, both India and Bangladesh, combinedly. It's a transboundary project. Dr. Huck is, ICAD is one of the partner of in both the projects. So definitely one is Tapestry, led by Professor Laila Mehta from University of Sussex. And definitely other one is the SSRC projects, which is Debojyoti will talk more about that. So in both the project, we are trying to do some participatory action research, and one major technique we are using is the photo voice. So we are especially focusing on the women who are left behind due to certain patriarchal rules and their caregiving roles, because now the women of Sundarbans in both the countries have the triple kind of a burden. They have to look after the children, they have to look after the restoring the livelihood process, and as well as the little bit of leftover agricultural processes or agricultural land the families have within the Sundarbans. So we gave digital cameras to those women to capture their livelihood challenges, any challenges they faced. We have not guided them because it is a participatory technique, and they wanted to express the voices that how the climate change impacts are impacting their children. So the mothers, we try to do our best to capture it, capture all the intersections of the society, the crab and fish collectors, the families who live in the embankments, ethnic minorities, religious minorities, woman-headed households, which is a new emergent in the Sunderbans social settings, and community with large agricultural land. So in the similar project in Bangladesh, maybe Debojyoti will talk about more. I'm just focusing on the Indian part of Sunderbans. So there were totally about 87 co-researchers so far. We call them co-researchers, the mothers, the very young mothers, work together to capture the issues which are impacting their children. So just these are some pictures which the mothers came up with us. We never focused on the how they capture the photos. There is any clarity in the picture? No, we never thought of in this line. But we just wanted to capture the issues. We just wanted to capture their voices. So as you see, that's fish catch is declining. My husband is migrated, so I have to go to the quarks. So there are issues like this. The women have captured. Leaving the smaller children to the relatively bigger one is because the mother has to go for the crack collections is another issue. And of course, as an adaptation process, they are trying their best to plant the mangrove to the support of the embankments. So all these issues they have captured, and we facilitate kind of platforms, policy platforms to negotiate with the local decision makers, because that is one of the major component of photo voice participatory action research. So the mothers themselves, they presented and they negotiated with the local policymakers like Panchayat Pradhan and the Panchayat members, the local health, medical, professionals, to how to come up with a mutually agreeable solutions for their problems. So, but this process is still going on. So I cannot say that what are the impacts. So we yet to discuss, we yet to find out that. And in both the projects, the photo voice is going on. But many interesting things has also come up that where the mothers couldn't say that, the mothers said that they couldn't capture. I mean, the one big issue is the domestic violence. Domestic violence, we know that's the livelihood uncertainty has put a kind of a pressure, mental pressure to the couples, to the entire family. So, and in this phobic situations, definitely the increased rate of violence, domestic violence, or the criminal activities, or the woman abuse is really an increasing factor, and so as the trafficking and early girl marriages of the girl child. So these issues, the mothers said that they couldn't capture because they didn't understand that what to capture in this issue, within these issues. But however, they told us during the discussions, during the debriefing sessions, that these are also the important factors for their life, which has a deep root in the climate change uncertainties. So interestingly, it's a kind of giving a voice. The voice, maybe Dr. Huck was just mentioning, because these are the mothers who have the young children. So we try to kind of giving them a platform, giving them a voice to say about their things. And they always say that, after the Photo Voice project, one sessions, we asked them, how do you feel? So the first thing they said that I feel like I'm doing a man's job. Because saying something about themselves or the community is always a man's job. So here they found it, the woman found a shift in the gender role. So they also said that they have a kind of a realization that they can also do something. And Sunderbans women are very, very aspirational, and we all agree to that. So this kind of initiatives we may need to voice the local adaptations, voicing the local adaptation processes in the near future that we were discussing about the COP26. So if we just
if you can wind up quickly.
These points already been discussed. So, yes. So yeah, so one last thing I would like to mention here, that's in both the project, in my both project Tapestry and SSRC projects, we are trying our best to have the transboundary learning, because as we already discussed that India and Bangladesh, they do not have a platform to discuss. So maybe this kind of opportunities this kind of platforms have opportunities to discuss the transboundary issues, mutual learning, and maybe a possible solutions for the Sunderbans. I would end here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. Sorry to kind of have to stop you because we have to go ahead with the other part of it. But I really would like to add a point, I think very important discussion, especially in context of transboundary. But you said that there has been no platform for transboundary work. It's, I think, not exactly the case.
No, not a political or formal platform.
Yes, a formal platform is there. It is called BISRCI, Bangladesh India Sunderban Regional Initiative. It's a platform where number of organizations from India and Bangladesh are attached. World Bank is attached. It's a formal platform. May not be reaching the status it should have been, but there's some formality into it. So just would like to upgrade here that there is some interaction being going on, but I'm definitely agreeable with you that the platform needs to be much more horizontal, must include other players, other stakeholders. That's the point. Okay, before I start the dialogue within the panelists, may I ask Dr. Mehta that do we need to strictly adhere to the time, or we will be IST Indian stretchable time? So can we kind of have 5 or 10 minutes more than the schedule? Because accordingly we'll proceed. Dr. Mehta. Dr. Mehta, are you there? Anyway, I think let's start the discussion. I think extremely important points came out from the whole deliberation. I start with a point, and I would like all the panelists who would like to respond to that. Migration as an adaptation strategy. I think that's an extremely important point. Before COVID struck, a large majority of experts used to think that migration in Sunderban is really working as an adaptation strategy. And various works in recent times, I was involved in a migration work about a month back. There's a South Asian report coming up with migration, and Sunderban is part of that. That 70% families have at least 1% migrated out of Sunderban. That's a close migration or a distant migration. Now, from the time the Kerala has disaster of extreme weather disaster, and a lot of people working in Kerala, the southern state, had to come back, and then COVID happened. So now migration doesn't seem to be the as lucrative option, as sustainable option as an adaptation measure it was used to be. So it further kind of underlines the importance of creating opportunities within Sunderban itself. And Dr. Hawk was talking about the education. Let me share that in Sunderban, in Indian Sunderban, the education level is pretty high, but the employment is very low. So there's a great disconnect between the education level and the employment level. So really would like all the experts to respond to that very quickly. Let me start with Professor Roy. What do you think? How important migration as an option, adaptation option, or we should look beyond that? Professor Roy.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Basu, for raising very pertinent point, because we are also closely observing this migration issue. I personally feel that this should be considered more as a choice, not as a compulsion. So if we can really help the community, the human capital development to a certain stage. So if people are willing, they can stay back. They can. But now what was happening in Sunderban is more like a compulsion. So, and that is what is development means mobility, and mobility is obviously everybody. When a person is mobile, he is more achieving an aspiration. So I would consider that I'm not against migration, but not the kind of constraints under which they have to migrate out, leaving their children without any caregivers. And regarding and linked to this, my point, the human capital development is the education. What you have raised, we also examined is that the Sunderban, particularly the Indian part of Sunderban, is having a good literate population. But the problem, you know, that we were doing some work, we saw that the quality of education, that is the quality of infrastructure, even in very large schools in Goshaba, Sagar, and many other places, which are having 1,500 children, there is dearth of science education. There is infrastructure, the lack of science education infrastructure, the vocational, the capacity building. So I think these are what is the infrastructure in these education, because otherwise people are migrating, and that is the kind of compulsive, when it is a kind of constrained migration.
So both about quality and quantity.
Yeah,
and that the quantity matters, also the quality matters.
It will be considered more as a choice, not as a compulsion. So
okay.
That I think would be very
great. Very quickly to Professor Hawk, because Indian Sunderban being responded by Dr. Roy. Professor Hawk, migration as an adaptation mode, especially in context to the COVID and everything. What do you feel? How should be the process, Professor Hawk?
Well, to some extent, climate-induced displacement, which is the term used in the climate change negotiations to refer to climate migrants, is inevitable and is already happening. It's predicted to grow in numbers quite considerably. It can be a very negative impact on people, or it can actually be positive if we can make it into a positive. In Bangladesh, we are trying to make it into a positive through a program we call Building Climate Resilient Migrant-Friendly Towns, to create these other towns as migrant-friendly towns so that people don't end up in the slums of Dhaka. Otherwise, they all end up in Dhaka. And we cannot stop them from coming, but we can incentivize them to go to other places. And that's what we are trying to develop in Bangladesh to see whether we can make that work. It's an experiment. It's see whether we can make it happen. But it's something we are actively looking at and seeing how we might be able to do that. But migration is unfortunately a fact of life we have to deal with.
Very interesting. Already such kind of townships or habitat centers being already in place, or Bangladesh government is working on it?
This is not the government of Bangladesh. This is the people of Bangladesh.
People of Bangladesh.
Yeah. So and they are the mayor of a town, one by one. Oh. The first town mayor was Mongla. The second town mayor is Noapara. We have to persuade the local authorities to accept this idea and then do something about it. It's not top-down government telling people what to do. It's people deciding that they want to do something and then doing it themselves. And so we have identified about 20 towns. We are talking to the municipal authorities, seeing who is interested. At the beginning, it was quite negative. We took a lot of time to persuade them to think of it seriously. The town mayor of Mongla is the first mover. He's moved forward with it. Other mayors are now quite interested. We hope that it will catch up and catch on. And at some point, the government may also support it, but it's not dependent on government. This is a people's movement.
I think extremely important piece of information and a lot to learn. I think India and Indian Sundarban can actually learn from it. Though I think the space is a big issue in Indian Sundarban. We have a population density of more than 1,000 here per square kilometer, which is quite a significant one. Thank you. Let me ask Professor Roy and maybe Professor Large to start that. When you are working on the project, how important migration is in context to the recent developments, and what you feel how the migration should be dealt with? Very quickly to respond to that. Professor Large.
Sorry, Andy, you're going first, yeah.
I'll go very quickly then. It was always a part of the project, and I'm sure Manoj will talk a bit more about it. But I remember Manoj and I having talks in the formulation of the project about exactly this idea of, permanent migration versus migration to secondary cities. and the interesting aspect of seasonality versus the more permanent migration that climate change will bring. I was just thinking as the responses were coming from Souvanic and Salim, about the effect of COVID and what that'll do on migration might give us some insights into sort of some of the challenges we might face in the future, because it's a stress test for the Sunderbans in many ways, and it'll be interesting to see what might come of that. But in the interest of time, I'll pass over to Manoj.
Okay.
Very quickly also, Andy, thank you very much. I will just give two aspects of it. One is the theoretical aspect. Probably colleagues are familiar. Intellectually, it is understood that there are at least 8 different processes of human adaptation, and mobility is firmly established. You can also sort of think it this in a smaller number of 3 different stages. Of first is adjustment, diversification, and then substitution or relocation. So you can see that this moves progressively. On the issue of really migration, how is it actually an adaptation? It's surprising. And one of the things that we are in this project examining, we're using the term, already have started using this term called modular livelihoods, where we're really finding how people really develop a suite of different livelihoods to pick from, depending on which seasons they are. And in that, you will see the distant part of the Sunderban peoples are coming to city Dhaka for rickshaw pulling, going to the EAT manufacturing places, going to even to harvest in another part of the country where harvest happens at a different time. So it's really, you can see that the diverse suite of livelihood that is coming. And it is in this project, we are monitoring 12 months of livelihood practices of 180 households located in 6 different hotspots in Bangladesh. So hopefully in 1 year time, we should be able to say how livelihoods in Sunderban differs from, say, in Chor area, from the southern eastern sort of hillside and things like that. So this is an ongoing project, but the idea is really to pick how the livelihoods are shifting, in particular theorizing this as a modular livelihood.
Okay, I think very important point and interesting point, and should be followed up. And another quick pointer, after which I will open the floor, is about the importance of having transboundary action. I think we keep on saying, I think each of the eminent panelists talked about, and Dr. Ghosh said that there's no formal platform. There may be a couple of platforms, but they haven't reached the level that should have been. My question, maybe I start with Professor Hawke here, that way back in, sure, please.
Sorry, really sorry, Dr. Basu, I'm sorry. Can I just request you, Dr. Debujyoti Das also had to make certain inputs after Pasna's presentation, if you could allow him.
See, I have no problem. The only point is, what is your time schedule? Because we are yet to open to the floor. We have been in the last round within the actually overshot. How long we can go on? 10-15 minutes we can go on?
Yeah, beyond the schedule.
So how much time Dr. Ghosh will take?
Dr. Das?
Because already the presentation has been made. Anything more to add to that?
I am afraid I won't be able to stay beyond the hour.
So, because that's what I was asking, that if he has any important point to make, I request that after we
this quick round, you could just quickly summarize your points.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes. Please go ahead. Then we'll continue.
Yeah. Okay.
Just make the main point, please.
Yeah. So the project we are doing is called Environmental Refugees, Climate, Health and Livelihood in the Indian Ocean region. So the main point I did highlight that came out as part of our study has been to some extent. So we are a team of 11 participants, and it involves 6 institutions across India, Bangladesh, Tanzania, and Mozambique, as you can see from this map. And also already been discussed by other speakers, is trans-regional and transboundary. And we are also focusing on this whole idea of decolonizing the knowledge that is from the global north, particularly in the context of migration studies and adaptation. So already some of the speakers have highlighted how this colonized, and as Shivaji and Upashna, who are the two researchers in West Bengal, and also people colleagues in Bangladesh who are working, some of the questions that has arisen out of this project are highlighted here. Why some people migrate while others don't, and Upashna already mentioned about kind of immobility of women because of the patriarchal norms, caregiving role of women in the household. So these are the kind of broader questions that we are exploring through this project, and which kind of directly links with the questions of adaptability, questions of this at the local level. And also, how does local adaptation look like in the context of the pandemic's reverse migration that has happened in the last 1 year, and also the subsequent displacement of people because of cyclones? So these are some of the questions that are quickly. And there is also this whole debate, the minimalist and the maximalist debate that is going around globally when we are talking about environmental kind of disaster mitigation. We need to kind of also focus on how developmental policies depoliticize the idea of migration and kind of disaster relief and adaptation. So that is another point that I wanted to highlight. And finally, we have these case studies in Bangladesh, the Shadnagar slum, and in India, already mentioned in Sunderban, which is badly affected by cyclones and floods. Some of the preliminary direction that our research is taking, which I would just quickly mention, is that internal and interregional migration is important as international migration that we are talking about. We need to decolonize the methodologies that I've already mentioned, and local adaptation is increasingly defined by initiatives and agencies of local communities. Like communities kind of have their own agencies, they have their own politics. Careful about that. Slow and rapid onset of climate change related impact will have differential impact of communities' mobility and local adoption. So there can be different ways in which people kind of adapt, like move seasonally, temporarily out of the Sunderbans, and they also sometimes move permanently when their land is completely lost to embankment, to erosion. As Upashna has already mentioned, photo voice and digital diary work in Sunderban has shown us that it has great role play in capturing community narratives of natural disaster during crisis and strife, as we have seen during the pandemic. It also empowers community to share their own story, particularly the most vulnerable community, women's and kind of lower caste group, particularly Dalits and other communities. So
Dr. Basu, you can wind up now.
Yeah, thank you. So this is what I had to say from my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the important point, but would have been better to give you more time to elaborate on that. But very quickly, just asking all the panelists how much time you have. It's now in Indian time 7:25. Officially, we have till 7:35. So can we go on for 15 minutes from now? 7:40 Indian. 15 minutes from now is okay with you?
Yes.
15 minutes. 15 minutes from now. Great. Yeah. So, Professor Hogg, 15 minutes is okay with you?
I'll try. I'll have to do 2 meetings at the same time.
Yeah, you always do that. It's nothing new for you. I do that. You always do that. So
I'll try. I was due to a meeting 15 kilometers away.
Oh my God.
10 minutes ago.
So 15 minutes. So just a question very quickly. I think it's very important. That's why I think I kind of talking about it. It was the Transboundary Initiative, and Dr. Hogg, because way back in 2010, the other Indian Prime Minister and the Bangladesh Prime Minister signed an agreement on Sunderban. It's on joint action on Sunderban. And subsequently, when our present Prime Minister went to Bangladesh a couple of years back, he also signed a couple of agreements on specifically on Sundarbans. Now, the point is, all these agreements are kind of put into a bit of a back burner. They have not realized the actual potential on ground. So with that background, and with the civil society initiative that's happening, there's a meeting between the Bangladesh and Indian Environment Minister in 2010. There's a meeting at the sidelines of 2015 Paris COP between the other Environment Minister of India and Bangladesh. Dr. Hogg, how do you think the whole initiative can be taken forward?
I think that the upcoming visit by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina from Bangladesh to India is an important event that we should try and get input into if we can, to ensure that at the highest level of the two central governments, they take this forward and not get stuck at the level of provincial government versus central government on the Indian side. Sunderban is an extremely important ecosystem, and the people living there are extremely vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. So it's a problem that we share across the three countries, I would say, the India, Central India, Bangladesh, and West Bengal. And so we must find a way. We have to find a way. And we need to be engaging with the decision makers to try and impress on them the necessity for doing that. I'll mention one other important factor on our side of the border. You may know that the bridge over the River Ganges has been completed now. They're doing the final carpeting of the roads, and it's due for opening in June of this year. As soon as the bridge becomes operational, it will connect Khulna and the Sunderban region with Dhaka city in a absolutely game-changing manner. Now you have to take a ferry. It will take you a day and a half to get across from Dhaka to Khulna. Then it's a matter of hours. You can go and come back the same day, even if you want to. And that will be a game-changing investment in that region, which can be a very bad investment because right now nothing is being protected and supported. So all kinds of unsuitable industries and businesses are putting signboards up around the Sunderban. If they're allowed to put their factories up, then I'm afraid we are in very bad shape. We have to stop them putting their factories up. They can have their signboards, but not put the factories that they want to put there. These are all polluting factories. They'll destroy the Sunderban. So, you know, on our side of the border, we are trying to impress on the government the need to protect the Sundarbans against the development. We are not against development. We want development, but we don't want the bad kind of development, which is what we have. And they must admit we have bad development, and we don't want bad development anymore. We want good development, and we can do that. Let's see.
Okay, very important point. Just first one is that talked about that all the three partners in this whole process, Indian government, Indian national government, West Bengal state government, and Bangladesh national government kind of need to do it together. I think it's completely doable because I have been part of this exercise for about a decade. And I find that unlike Tista, it's a win-win scenario. If Sunderban is conserved, both Indian part of Sunderban and Bangladesh Sunderban stand to gain. It's not like Tista that you are splitting resources, you're adding resources there. So I find myself working closely with the government of West Bengal in that context, that there's any reservation about working together with Bangladesh. So I think that's a win-win scenario. We need to build up on that. We need to work on that in a proper manner. That may be useful. And as for your bridges thing, I just hope that that will not add to more migration. It may end up being a physical passage to migration. Very important, Professor Hawk, just to see other responses. Maybe Professor Roy, very quickly on this issue of transboundary initiative.
Manoj, will you like to go first because there's Azan going on? So.
No, I think
yes.
I can be a little provocative, if I may, if the panel allows me. I have a feeling that the ecology of Sunderban as such defies the norms that we apply on human settlement. Probably there are a set of meta declaration, meta policies that the two governments and the three, and may say the central and provision and the Bangladesh needs to come together. They share certain value of this whole ecology as one system. At the moment, the two countries have two very divergent political ideology, and that ideology. And sometimes I was once talking to Souvanic in a sense that if Indian government supports come to Bangladesh and Bangladesh civil society is so vibrant, is that the Indian government support through Bangladesh government will arrive to Bangladesh part of the Sundarban much faster than the Indian government's their own support arriving to the affected population in the Indian side. So what I am wanting to really say that the political ideological points set aside, we need to sort of consider the whole thing as an ecosystem that deserves its own principles and governance.
Okay, great. Other panelists would like to kind of share any inputs on this particular thing? Professor Large and...
I thought Souvanic was coming next, but I'll just, I suppose, highlight and we won't get an answer to it, the ecosystem services paradox, I suppose. It's what Salim says. If you want people to be supported, you bring in development. That undermines ecosystem services. At the same time, one of the greatest treasures that the Sunderbans have is that they have a core area which arguably, according to the theory, offers no ecosystem services at all, because the people aren't there. It's a World Heritage Site because it's a core area of where it's people aren't there. So we have this paradox of what level of ecosystem services we aim at, but also what we lose, and then draped across all of that is culture, because the culture is intertwined with the ecosystem services, but the culture is far more common than maybe would generally agree. Because it's two countries, the culture is really common across the Sunderban in terms of the livelihoods and the requirements on the landscape. So I think that's the basis to begin from. It's a shared culture.
Dr. Jayanta, may I just send one sentence, please, to Andy? But Andy, is there a debate around that ecosystem also have a regulatory service that benefits not just the local population, but much wider population?
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you entirely. I mean, the thing we grapple with in the hub is how we have a conversation about ecosystem services as a topic, because once you use that term, you lose half of the audience. And if we want to talk to Delta dwellers and communities, we have to find another way of, but yes, regulating services is a really key one, but a lot of the intended audience might not understand the sort of quite complex basis of that.
Yeah, may I respond?
Sure.
I think great points, what Andy said and what Manoj is also mentioning, that the ecosystem services, but certainly if we go by the culture, that would be striking a chord, because India, this is a kind of a syncretic culture, which is originally more like a religious harmony, the Islam and Hindu and all. So probably, if we can start with culture, the joint cultural festivals, because on our side, we have Sundarban Utsav and Sundarban Festival. I think Bangladesh also had something like that. So along with what Dr. Basu is saying, that something is happening at the national level, probably Sheikh Hasina's visit, and more at the political level, we need to pursue. But we can start with a joint festival kind of thing. Right. Probably there we can, because the Bon Bibi and many others, I think there are various forms, local forms also, which is actually original form, and then that actually customized according to the kind of landscape level changes. So if we can, if something can be started at the community level in terms of shared culture, right, and how it is evolving culture, then probably we can develop a narrative around ecosystem services, because one of the ecosystem services is cultural aspect. I think then probably much easier also to link the ecosystem services with the evolving culture and how it is getting kind of homogenized and getting extinct. Probably that discussion can be very meaningful.
Absolutely. I think that is tomorrow's discussion, that ecosystem services. I think ecosystem services, all said and done, is still in its infancy in Sundarban. We are yet to kind of work in details on that, quantify on that, how it can be, as Professor Hawk, I think, talking, and others are also saying that how the services, the value of services can go back to the people. unless the value of services go back to the people, they will not be preserving it. So that's very important to have that connect. The dots need to be connected about the ecosystem services per se and how it is going back to the people at large. So that is very important. So let me open the floor. Dr. Mehta, how to go about it? People are going to ask through kind of question answer, chat, or in person?
Sir, yes, sir.
If you can,
yes, thank you so much. I see that we have only comments about the presentations that have been made in the chat box. So we do not have questions per se. So we can use the 2-minute time to get experiences and insights from the experts themselves before we can have your concluding remarks. We don't see any questions.
Anybody? I think we can open the floor for anybody asking question. So anybody would like to ask anything?
Krishna Ray, if you can just speak and ask your question quickly.
Sure. Please go ahead.
Krishna Ray, please unmute.
Please unmute yourself.
No, I'm not going to ask anything. It's just.
Okay.
Okay.
So it doesn't seem that there are many questions. It's a too complicated affair. Yeah. Somebody is raising the.
No, it's her own
hand.
You can just lower. No, it's Krishna Ray.
Otherwise,
you can lower your hand, madam. Yeah.
Just to highlight something that was in the chat, that the Durham University are coordinating a Delta's Futures conference. There's a lot of really interesting material on photo voices in some of the presentations, and that's I've just put in the chat on the 24th and 25th of March. I'm sure that they're looking very keen for people to register for that, but it's called Delta Futures. If you just Google that, one word, deltafutures.co.uk, you'll find it.
Okay, thank you. And as because there is no questions apparently on either in the chat or in person, very quickly, all the 4 panelists, if one issue you think that needs to be reiterated or told, not being told, very quickly, maybe a minute each. May I start with Professor Large? Anything you would like to add on very quickly?
I think we're at a really interesting point in history. I think we're at the point where adaptation can be grasped, as Salim says, like a nettle, and we really need to grab that now. And there's a real drive over the next 2 years or so. I really thought those initiatives that were mentioned from the ground up were the way forward. So let's join together on those initiatives.
Okay, Professor Roy.
Yeah. So just one point, I feel that the locally led adaptation, there are cases of failures and there are cases of success. So I think if we look into the governance or institutional aspects of these success and failure cases, which is ecologically sensitive, which is actually replicating well. So if we can see the governance aspect of these alternative livelihoods and local adaptation, probably we'll get some clue that which has potential for replication and multiplication, and which probably has something, some problem inbuilt into it. So that's my only point.
Professor Ray. Professor Hawk.
Sorry, yeah, I was talking mute. So thank you very much. I really look forward to this transboundary element, particularly Epar Bangla, Upar Bangla, that we have been growing up listening to and thinking about it. And particularly, I think it would be very interesting to see the livelihood and the other transition that is happening in one side and the other side, and whether there is any element of cross-learning from it.
Yeah, right. Professor Hawk.
Thank you very much. So recalling that yesterday was the 21st of February, which is the International Mother Language Day now, based on the Bangladeshi loss of lives in defense of our mother tongue, which we share with you across the border, I think that's a huge asset that we need to be building on, and we don't build on it enough in terms of collaboration. And I mentioned that my center is now focusing our attention in Bangladesh in the Khulna region. I'll be traveling to Khulna next week. We are doing a major in-depth assessment of the situation in Khulna with a long-term perspective, and then the neighboring towns of Mongla, Nopara, Gopalganj as well, and Shatkhira, because that is really the hottest spot in the Bangladesh climate impacts geography. Or the whole country is vulnerable, but that particular place, region is the most vulnerable. And as I said, the development opportunities that will come with the bridge can be very negative as well as positive. So we need to be very careful about what happens in Khulna town, city, and then beyond the city boundary in the surrounding area. And particularly education of the young girls and boys I mentioned, we are very interested in how to improve that. And we would be very interested in collaborating with all of you across the border. I think this is a common agenda that nobody, Jayanta, you're quite right. This is a win-win positive agenda. This is not a win-lose agenda in terms of, water sharing or not water sharing. This is the same ecosystem. We have the same thing, same problems on both sides. It's in our common interest to preserve it and to help our people at the same time. Thank you.
Great. Just before I hand over to Dr. Mehta for the formal kind of wind up of the way we are planning to do, just a very quick comment. First is from the Indian Sunderban context, that when we are talking about adaptation and other issues, we need not take the entire Sunderban per se. Because the moment you start talking about the entire Sunderban, it becomes too large, too big to be handled. I was going through the data and I find that in Indian Sundarbans, out of the 19 blocks that we have, 8 are really vulnerable. Out of the 190 GPs we have, about 1/3 are vulnerable. About 1,052 villages we have, about 25% are vulnerable. So let us prioritize the area of action. Let us prioritize the area of action on adaptation, take local people into confidence, and all the other measures, make them something to see. As of now, the people in Sunderban are just looking at discussion, and discussion. We cannot possibly look towards 2050. What's happening in 2050? We need to look what's going to happen in 2025, what's going to happen in 2030. So let us take the short term, then build up on the long term. No point the 30, 50 years projection and doing all these researches. Already we know that Sunderban is vulnerable. Let us act on ground. Research is very important, cog in the wheel, but let the will to run, the will is basically action. That's number one. Number two, as for the transboundary action, I am completely agreeable with the very eminent panelists. We need to look at locally, nationally, and transboundary. And I completely agree with Professor Hogwood, whatever little exposure I have to the issue, it's a win-win scenario. Unless like the water sharing or everything, it's a win-win scenario. I know for sure the present West Bengal state government is willing to be part of it. In fact, few days back in Indian Parliament, one of the parliamentarians from the government which rules West Bengal raised questions on COP26 and Sunderban. Actually, he called me up about a day before the parliament session to know what he should talk about. And when I shared the Sunderban issue, he was all there. He mentioned that in the parliament. So I don't see any reservation from that. So that's very important. Need to link at the kind of dots and to find out, build up on this transboundary action, both at government level, but also at the intellectual level, at the kind of activist level, and try to find out a solution together. Sunderban is a too complicated area to only government to act, but also without government, we can't act possibly. So we need to take everybody on board and try to go ahead. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. And let me hand over to Dr. Mehta for winding it up. Thank you. I don't think I have taken much more time than what.
No, absolutely not. Sir, if you could just briefly clarify about what you mentioned, an Indo-Bangladesh common platform. Okay. This was a question that was asked by Saurav Sarangi, and this went unanswered. Yes, sir.
Very quickly, in 2014 or 15, a formal initiative called Bangladesh BISRCI, Bangladesh India Sunderban Regional Cooperative Initiative. That is a platform being created where number of non-profits from India and number of non-profits and professional organization, research organization, think tank from both India and Bangladesh were part of it. World Bank is part of it. The organization like WRF, WWF, all are part of that. So there's a lot of exercise being done. And I personally, from the communication background, media, we created a media strategy, because along with the politicians who are the decision makers, the decision pushers are the media. And the next generation decision pushers are the young generation Dr. Hawk was talking about. So we have a media strategy in place already being done. It's being formalized. You can also find it in the internet as well. Or otherwise, I can pass on what has been happening. So we have reached to a certain level. So the important is to build up on that and to go to the next. So a lot of strategies being made, a lot of research is being made from this BISRCI, but we need to build up on that. Very happy to share with anybody who's interested about it. I can always share more points on that.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, sir. So now we come to the end of the program. We have shot by more than 15 minutes. Thank you so much. I would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of the IMPRI Center for Environment, Climate Change and Sustainable Development to all our experts who have gathered here today and shared extremely rich insights. And to all our attendees here on Zoom and on Facebook Live. I would like to especially thank our chair, Dr. Jayanta Basu, all our panelists, Professor Souvanic Roy. Thank you, sir. Without your guidance, this would have not been possible. Professor Andy Large, Professor Salimul Haq, Professor Manoj Roy, and our presentations by Dr. Upasna and Devujyoti, my friends. So thank you so much for your wonderful and proactive participation. I think this is a very important topic and theme which we all need to continuously discuss and coordinate upon, so that we have really proactive and action-based solutions for this vulnerable region of the world. Thank you so much, and I would like to thank the attendees who are watching here on Zoom and also on Facebook Live, and to all those who would be watching us later on YouTube and listening to the podcast on different platforms. Thank you so much, and I wish you all a very good day. Good night. Thank you.